Alright then. So the veteran's name and birth date is Warren Nichols, and he was born on January 27th, 1923. He served in World War II.
Yes.
His highest rank was Private First Class.
Yep.
The current date and location of this interview is on November 29th, 2012, at Mr. Warren Nichols' home in West Sacramento. The interviewer's name is Jeffrey Podell, Elsa Young, Pete Young, and Lauren Hartz. And this interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress as part of the Vinci High School America at War project.
Alright.
So, we're gonna start now. So,
Yeah.
Alright then. So, my first question to you is, when were you born?
27th of January, 1923.
And where were you born?
Elysian, Minnesota. Elysiam, Minnesota.
And did you have any relatives that were veterans?
Any what?
Relatives that were veterans.
Yeah, they're all dead now, though.
Oh, alright then. And, what was your childhood like?
What was what?
Your childhood like?
I lived on a farm in Minnesota. Our closest neighbor was 3 miles away, so I had a real easy time of doing whatever I wanted to without bothering anyone. My dad bought me my first rifle, a .22 single shot, when I was 11 years old, and I could go hunting anytime I wanted. We had partridge and prairie chicken and pheasant, cottontail, snowshoe jack. We had all sorts of game, and I could go out and shoot what I wanted to, and Mom would cook it. Incidentally, I'm a reasonable shot. That was done at 100 yards. I got all sorts of the damn things laying all over the place, and I've done a lot of shooting. I reload my own cartridges so that I get better than factory cartridges, and you have what you call minute of angle. If you can shoot 1 inch at 100 yards, as that travels on, it goes like this, and that's 2 inches at 200, 3 inches at 300, 4 inches at 400. By the time you get out to 500 yards, you got a 5-inch circle. I can take a man in the head every time at 500 yards. That's a long ways away.
Yeah. And, do you remember what your education was like?
Yeah. I went to the public schools in Waterloo, Iowa. Graduated from East Waterloo High School, and when I came home from service, I went to Iowa State Teachers College and didn't like it. And I went down to Kansas, and I went to Ottawa University there, and I didn't stay because I couldn't afford to, so I got about a year of college, you know.
Alright. And, did you volunteer or were you drafted?
I volunteered.
And why did you choose to enlist?
Well, all of my buddies, we were in high school. We graduated from high school in June. The war started in December. None of us were married. Everybody was going in. As long as everybody was going in, it seemed like a good idea that I'd go with it. My high school class, incidentally, was decimated. We got into the first part of it, and it was, a lot of them didn't come back.
Oh, alright. And, why did you choose to specifically join the Marine Corps?
Because I had a cousin by the name of Allison D. Town that was in the Marine Corps and went in there in peacetime, and when the war came up, he was still in there. And I had another cousin by the name of Neil Wood, and he and I went down and enlisted together in the Marine Corps.
And did you have any specific friends or relatives that enlisted into the Army, or?
Oh, yeah, well, my best buddy, he and I grew up together, and when we were 11 years old, neither of us had a brother, so we adopted each other. And he went into the Navy, and he was flying a TBF Grumman Avenger torpedo aircraft going in on the side of aircraft battleships against the enemy, and that was a very hazardous job, more hazardous than mine. And luckily he came home alive, but he died in 1986, heart problem.
Alright then. And did you enlist with anyone when you enlisted into the service? Like, did you enlist with anyone from your local area? No? Alright. And did you go through boot camp after enlisting?
I went through boot camp at San Diego.
And so this is where you first received your training? This is where you first received your training?
Yeah, that was 14 weeks of hard training.
And after boot camp, where were you first sent to?
Little short jaunts. I went to a place called Miramar. I was there for about a month or two. Ultimately wound up at the Mojave Desert, a place called Mojave. And I was up there for training, and I stayed there forever. And I didn't get out of there until I enlisted in December of 42, and I didn't get up there until I'd say December of 43, about a year later, and I stayed at Mojave until July of 44. Then they shipped me out. Of course, I went over where the Marine Corps told me to go. I wanted to get into it a lot sooner than I did, but you know, I went and complained to my commanding officer about I'd had my training. Other guys with less training had gone over, and I hadn't. And he sat there very patiently and listened to me doing my stack. When I was through, he looked at me, he said, "Mr. Nichols, you have not really taken a hold of what's happening here. In the Marine Corps, you don't tell the Marine Corps what you want to do. They tell you what you're going to do. You're dismissed." I said, okay, whatever. But they shipped me out of there, and I went to Espiritu Santos, the Hebrides. We were there for a few weeks, and then we took off from there and went to Guadalcanal. And we were there only for a couple days, and then we shipped north, and we hit Peleliu the 15th of September of 44.
I'm sorry to backtrack a bit, but what was boot camp like?
Oh, well, they tried to break you every way they could. And they said if you came through there, you'd never break in combat. And what they did, they started you out very early in the morning, and they pushed you as hard as they could physically, and then they started pushing mentally every way they could to see if they could break you. And it seems like the Marine Corps has ways of finding out who a guy is. And ultimately, when you get in combat especially, there's no subterfuge, there's no facade, no false front. You either are or you aren't, and it's damn apparent in a hurry. So that's where we are.
And what was life like in the Mojave Desert after you?
Hot. They had us on training out there, conditioning and training. They had an obstacle course. You had to run it twice a day, and it was a tough one. Ultimately, they came to us and they said, "You're going on a 36-mile hike across the desert." And they went on to say, "We'll have trucks behind you. Anybody that collapses, we'll pick them up, take them back to camp. We'll do, if somebody says I can't go any further and just sits down, they have admitted that every man that sticks is a better man than they are. And they said, we will have no one here who will admit a better man exists anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we went on that 36-mile hike, and we beat the Marine Corps record. And when we came back, I went into what was then our barracks, and I walked over to my bunk and flopped face down. That was about 6 in the evening. At 6 in the morning, when my belly blew, I was still laying there with my helmet on, my back on, the whole thing. I hadn't twitched a muscle.
And what was the name of your battalion slash squadron?
It was, the name of the unit was VMF 121.
VMF?
VMF.
Alright then. And do you remember who your commanding officer was?
I certainly do. His name was Meyer, Walter Meyer, Major Walter Meyer. He died in Hawaii about 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. And how much did you know about the war when you enlisted?
I had never been in a war before, didn't know anything about it, but I had a pretty good idea that it would be people shooting at each other, which could get unpleasant, you know.
Yeah. And did you enlist for any political reasons?
I have been raised here in the USA as an American boy. I enjoyed my freedoms, I loved my country, and I didn't want to learn to speak Japanese or German, and I wanted my life to be as it always was. I didn't want it to change radically, and I thought, gee whiz, if nobody stands up and says, hey, this has got to stop, you know, it's going to change. So you go in there with the idea, well, it's a war, to find out if it's going to change or if it isn't. Now, we got a speech, and I think that this is one that you might want to remember. Our commanding officer told us, he said, we are now standing at the crossroads of history. If we don't do a job here, we'll go into the dark ages again, where a man will not be able to stick his head up and say anything. We'll go into a millennium, the world's worst, like no freedoms of any kind. So, if you want that kind of a world, fine, sit down. But if you don't, you have to go and do it. So, we did not want the Dark Ages to come back again and stay here for another millennium. It just didn't seem like something we could endure.
Yeah. Well, did you know about the reasons for the war, its purposes and its goals?
I would say to a degree yes and to a degree no. I didn't know what the Germans were doing. I only knew the Japanese had hit us in the Pacific, and I knew we were going to have to oppose them. And I joined the outfit that would oppose those that hit us. And in the meantime, there was another war going on over in Europe. It was entirely different than our war. People on both sides were giving up 100,000 at a time. When we hit Peleliu, there were 13,000 Japanese there. When we left there were less than 200 alive. And that's the way they were.
Did you ever believe in the purposes of this war?
Yeah, the purpose was to stay free, to keep our country the way it was. Yeah, you betcha.
And did your views on this war change after the war?
Is what?
Did your views on this war change after the war?
Not really. Not really. I knew what we were there for, and I knew we did it, and we come out on the long end, and I got out of the service and went home to try to put my life back together and catch up with where. And then I got married in 1947. I got home in 45, December of 45. 2 years later, I got married. 3 years after that, 1950, our first child was on the way. And the Korean War happened. About that time, I got phone calls from all over the country. Hey Nick, this is McCoskey. I'm going back in. We've got some soldiers over there that aren't well trained, and there's few of them. They're going to get overrun. They need trained men in a hurry. Let's go. And I said no. So this went on for several days. Finally, I got a phone call about the third or fourth day. My wife Genevieve said to me, Nick, you have to go or you'll hate me. So she said, go and come back safe. And I did. My daughter, Susan, was not born yet. I left August 26th. She was born September the 11th. 15 days later. I didn't get to see her for a while. And that's the way life is. Got it.
Would you like us to stop the interview?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to break down.
No, it's okay.
It's
It's okay.
perfectly
We just
fine.
want you to feel comfortable talking right now. If you need a break, then we can absolutely cater to that.
So I got very lucky. I walked through with minimal damage. I know that Don Sheldon, for one guy, woke up screaming in the middle of the night every night. I never let it get into my head that badly. I guess I must have been a little stronger than some. But there are those who, although they don't show much in the way of physical wounds, they're hurt worse than some of the guys that got hit. One guy who lives down in Palo Alto was shot through the chest, and he survived. And he came home, and he'd always worked in oil fields. He went back there, and those guys would work all day and then drink at night until they couldn't drink anymore and then go to sleep. And this guy by the name of Berglund did that, and ultimately he called me up and he said, Nick, you know what combat is. How'd you like 24 hours a day of it? There's daytime hallucination, nighttime nightmares. They had him in a rubber room for 4 years, trying to get him dried out. He'd been drinking too much, you know. And he told me, he said, I'll never take another drink. And I can't believe him. 4 years of that would be enough. So some of them got hurt badly, and I picked up everybody over there. Explosions would drive coral into your skin, you know, little pieces. I had a chunk right there, and every time I shaved over it, I cut myself. I finally went down to the doctor and had it taken out. But I think everybody got hit. Now, in order to get a Purple Heart in the Marine Corps, you have to be hit hard enough that it takes you out of combat, off duty for 3 days. So, anyhow, I picked up a few little pieces, and when the guys are up at the hospital tents and they're sawing legs off, they got second chest wounds, stuff like that. Are you going to turn in with a thing like that? I put my thumbnail against it and pulled it out. We had sulfa powder, and I put some sulfa powder in there and a bandage on it and kept going, because you don't turn in with something like that. You know how you get a square one like that? Okay, you know what a hand grenade looks like? Okay, It breaks up in those little squares and away it goes. Well, if that would have hit me full bore, that would have broken that bone and come out the other side. But as it was spent when it hit me. And the damn thing was sizzling hot, and it just sat there and burned it. I got rid of it. But you don't turn in with something like those things. We had guys that were hit badly, that refused to leave the damn line. And they didn't get a Purple Heart. They found it more so than some of the guys that got hauled in. So it's, you know, everybody's different.
And, so let's talk about your actual service in the war. What was your job like in the war?
I was to keep the girls in the grass skirts pacified, you see, and I want to tell you about my many conquests. No, damn it! I didn't get to Hawaii. Okay. When we hit Peleliu, September the 15th, my outfit was Marine Air Force, okay? So we hit the island, and our planes did not come in for 20-some days. And of course we had no aircraft to service or anything like that. Now, in the Marine Corps, I will say this, you have every man in the Corps is a combat man. Every man has been trained the same way with a rifle. And I don't care if you're a colonel or a general, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're an office pinky, I don't care if you're a cook or a baker, I don't care what your job is. When they want you in the lines, you're a rifleman. That's it. And if you got nothing else to do, like your planes haven't come in yet, guess where they put you? So, the thing winds up, yeah, we were used at that point, and I will say this, even after I got pulled out of the lines, my job was running a 600-gallon truck that had aircraft fuel in it. They didn't have to hit me. All they had to do was hit the truck, and I felt more insecure there than I did up front. Anyhow, I liked that.
And you were talking a bit about the two battles you were involved in. Were those the only two battles you were involved in, or were you involved
Just Peleliu. Now, I'd like to go into a little bit of history for you at this particular point, because a lot of people don't know why Peleliu was hardly ever heard of, and it was a hell of a lot wilder battle than I ever thought of it. Okay. The 1st Marine Division was comprised of 1st, 5th, 7th Regiments. That was the 1st Division. They went in on Guadalcanal the 7th August of 42. They fought there for 139 days. Now here we are, later, here's Peleliu, same outfit, 1st, 5th, 7th Regiments, made up the 1st Division. They hit Peleliu. 1st Regiment alone, without counting the others, 1st Regiment alone in 6 days had more casualties than the whole division suffered on Guadalcanal in 139 days. We didn't get dressed. There were a lot of mistakes made there. When the 1st Division got in 6 days, the 1st Regiment was decimated. In Europe, you get 15% casualties. They pull your outfit out of the line. 1st Regiment had 60% casualties, and they pulled them out. They kept the other 2 regiments in, the 5th and 7th. Pretty soon the 7th had 60% casualties. They pulled them out. They had an army unit, the 81st Wildcats, setting out on ships. And you got 3 commanders of 3 regiments, Chesty Pullard, 1st Regiment, Bucky Harris, 5th Regiment, Hanneken 7th Regiment. 3 colonels were telling the general, Rupertus, hey, we got a problem here. You ought to send the army in to back us up at least to bring in some supplies and so on. And he says, nah, my Marines can handle it. If he had got every damn Marine on that island killed, he'd have been famous for a lifetime, for years to come. He didn't care. His wife and his 2 daughters had died in China of cholera. He was a bitter man and he didn't care who died. And he was out on the ship instead of in where he should have been on the shore. He's got 3 regimental commanders telling him we have a problem. And he wouldn't listen. He phoned in and he told Chesty Puller, who was the commandant of the 1st Regiment. He said, on your left flank, I want an attack. Chesty Puller told him, he said, with all due respect, sir, I've got 19 men up there. And that's all there are. And entrenched Japanese out in front of them, about 500. Now, an attack up there doesn't seem logical. Rupert has said, I told you I wanted an attack. Chesty Puller was a good Marine. He was a Marine colonel. He was in charge of the 1st Regiment. So he had to take orders. And he called up front and said, I want that attack. I Company, 1st Marines, on the left flank. A few minutes later, there were not 19 men up there anymore. That was it. I would say, okay, here's the bitter part of the whole thing. You know who Bull Howes he was? Okay, he was a Navy top gun. They had MacArthur in on the meeting, top man meeting. Also, Nimitz. And everybody said, we don't need Peleliu. They're 500 miles from the Philippines. MacArthur's going to be going into the Philippines. The reason they wanted this island is they figured somebody would be coming 500 miles from there to hit MacArthur in the back. But he hit there at the same time we hit Peleliu. And they said there weren't enough planes there with enough mileage to them that they could get to him anyway. So they said it was not necessary. MacArthur agreed, everybody agreed except Nimitz. And he was top commander in the Pacific. He said, oh, they're on the ships, let them go. Let them go in. That cost 4,000 Marine lives for nothing. Not one damn thing. That's why I'm a little bitter about Peleliu. That's why you don't hear much about it. They made a lot of mistakes up there. They didn't want it brought out. So I've said it now, and it's out. But good.
Alright then. So over the course of the war, did you ever get injured? You spoke briefly about your injuries.
Not injured, really. I could have done the same thing at home with a can opener.
Alright then. And during the war, how did you stay in contact with your family?
Letters. It'd take about 3 weeks or a month for my letter to get to the folks. Then it'd take that long for a letter to get back to me. So you weren't really current, you know, with what you did. I had a buddy by the name of Danny. And when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, he came to me the next day. He said, Nick, I couldn't qualify for the Marines. I'm going to fight on the same side as you. I went down this morning and enlisted in the Army. We sent emails back and forth during the war. Finally in September, about the time I hit Peleliu, his letters stopped coming. And I wrote home to my mother and I said, Mom, have you heard from Danny? And she wrote back and she said, well, your dad has a new job. And, you know, your sister, blah, 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 nothing about Danny. So I wrote another letter of yours from Danny. I knew she wouldn't lie to me. So this went on for a little while, and I told her, I said, well, you got the last letter you're going to get from me until you mention Danny in one of your letters. So when I got a letter from her, it was that Danny was killed at Lae, New Guinea. And she didn't want to tell me that. She was afraid I would make a grand then I learned if you make a grandstand play, you last 5 minutes. You don't take many of the enemy out. If you can stay around for 6 months or a year, you can take a lot of them out.
Most people have not witnessed combat, so are you willing to describe what that was like at Peleliu?
Like what happened. Men shot at each other, men threw mortars at each other. When we were on the way in to the island, the Japanese had good artillery siege guns sitting up there, field guns, and they knocked out a bunch of our Higgins boats and Amtraks on the way in. Now, here's the important part of that. Once you get on the island, these Higgins boats and stuff are to put the wounded on them, take them out to the USS Solus or the USS can't think of the name. 2 hospital ships out there. Then they were to go over to the supply ships and bring in ammunition and chow. We shot so many of them out of the water on the way in that we didn't have enough supplies. They couldn't bring enough supplies in. So, anyhow, we complained, and the old man told us, he said, we can only bring so much in. We can bring either chow or ammo. Which do you want? So we got a choice.
And what are some things about war that you feel that people do not understand about
I did not understand? Well, I don't understand how men can come to the place where over an ideology of some sort they're willing to kill each other. It just, they couldn't sit down and come to any kind of an agreement. So, because they couldn't agree, they couldn't live us here and the Japanese over there and leave each other alone. No, we had to be in it. It's for a kid off the farm in Minnesota, not understanding international politics or anything, it didn't make much sense to me why we couldn't just leave each other alone. But apparently we couldn't.
And did the constant war and combat ever start to feel ordinary? Or did the horror of it never ever go away?
Okay, my wife died 2 months ago. Right now, I hurt like hell. Right now, I miss her like crazy. I'd give my life if I could have her back for 10 days. Ultimately, I lost another wife, Genevieve. And it is like a bright red searing cut pain, vital, it hurts. As time goes by, the hurt diminishes. And I'm certain that it never goes away completely, but it diminishes to where you can handle it. Right now, I'm trying to diminish the loss of my second wife 2 months ago. She was 7 years younger than I am. I never figured I'd have to go through this again, because I was older than her. But sometimes you get the same thing twice in the same lifetime. Not good. Remember, get a woman that's very healthy. If she dies, tell her she has no permission to leave until you're gone. Works best that way. The only thing is, that's what I told Flo. Now, have you ever tried to tell a woman anything? Save your breath.
After all this war, did you ever feel that it was worth it?
Like what?
Did you feel that after the war, did you feel that it was worth it?
I was traveling through Colorado, and I saw this vast sweep like this, and I went up like this, and there's that mountain, and it was glorious. It was such grandeur, such beauty. and I was with Flo. We pulled up in the scout, and I took a look at this mountain. And ultimately I turned to Flo and said, it was worth everything we paid, because no Jap says that he owns that damn mountain. That's ours. Yeah, it was worth it. It wouldn't have been worth it to live in the dark ages for the next millennium. It wouldn't have been worth it to not be free, to stick your head up and say what you want to say. Right now I can say what I want to say. I've said a lot of things that I want to say. I wouldn't have been free to do that had we lost that war. And a lot of men paid a hell of a price to win it. I paid very little. I just gave some of my time.
Did you ever have the opportunity to share all of your experiences in war with her?
With Flo? Not really. I talked a couple times. She tagged me and asked some questions, but I never really opened up a lot on it. I think I've told you more than I told her.
What was your feelings when your service was over, when you were finally done?
Well, okay. I'll give you two shots on that. One of them, we were on this island, and they had left half of our outfit there. Right north of us was an island called Battle of Peleliu. There were 100,000 Japanese up there. And they would try to come down and infiltrate to take out a bunch of aircraft or a fuel dump or an ammo dump or whatever. And of course, someone would shout, "State of siege," and we'd all head for the shore. And this particular night, I heard somebody yell, "State of siege." Bernfeld come and grabbed me by the arm. He says, "Let's go, Nick, let's hit the beach." So we head down for the beach, and somebody shouted, "It's all over, it's all over." And I stopped Bernfeld, and I said, "They've repelled him." He said, "Nick, there might be some left. Let's go." So we headed on down. I heard it several more times. Now, a military man, if anything is going on, you're trying to figure out what is going on. There were shots being fired into the air, and there was no aircraft up there. Fire broke out all over the island. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So we got further on down, and somebody hollered again, "It's over, it's over." And I grabbed Ernfeld and says, "Whoa, you know what happened?" He said, "What?" I said, "The war is over." He said, "You son of a bitch. He wasn't done fighting." I grabbed my rifle by the muzzle, slung it into the brush, and sat down and cried like a kid. Yeah, I was happy it was over.
When was the date of this? When did you hear about,
I think it was August around the 10th, if I'm not mistaken, when the news came to our house.
Was it hard to come home and adjust to the normal life after?
No. I was tickled to death that I was going to come back. And then I would remind me that if I run into anybody in the cult, I get to shoot them like the Japanese. Because on the way home, we were 8 days out in the ocean, 8 days away from the USA. Some cult in Southern California was giving the keys to their cars away and signing them over in their houses and so on. They said the end of the world was going to happen in 3 days. And they were sure of it, so they were giving their houses away, their cars, everything. And I thought, after all this, and I'm 8 days out, and 3 days from now the world's going to end, I was unhappy. I was about to dive off that ship and swim faster than it to get back. Yeah, I wanted to get back here. And I never felt a great deal better than when I got my feet on the shore. But they shipped us out instantly. We got into into the bay down here, got off the ship, and some wonderful lady, she must have been about 80, 85, walked up and handed me a cup of coffee and a donut. And I said, will you marry me? And she said, yeah. So anyhow, I got one bite out of the donut, and they said, fall in. So I fell in breaks. They took us across the damn bay to Treasure Island. We were in the States for about 10 minutes and they took us back out. Now we got out at Treasure Island, we were looking across the bay at Oakland, the bright lights that we hadn't seen in a couple of years, you know. And we were anxious to get in there and chase women and get drunk and, you know, have fun. So we weren't able to. The first thing they did, they took a movie, and it was reorientation. They showed a picture of a cute gal. I mean, she was built. And she had on a skirt with pleats in it. She had saddle shoes on and white socks and a nice crisp white blouse. God, she was pretty. And in the movie it said she looks clean. But then they showed you pictures of somebody who had syphilis and their nose was eaten away. You could look right into their nasal cavities and so on. And I screamed, I don't care, I want you anyway! So, anyhow, that was part of the indoctrination. The next thing, they showed a movie and they showed a pair of old boondocker shoes. They said, these shoes have trod the shores of Guadalcanal, Tulagi, Gavutu, Tanyambogo, Tawas, Saipan, Tinian, Okinawa, so on, you know. Wear these shoes and be proud. Keep them on, you know. It was a fit for re-enlist. And I said, I don't think so. So they kept us out there 6 days, looking across at those lights before they turned us loose. And that was long, 6 days. I wanted to get into town and order up a hamburger or something good.
I'm gonna backtrack just a tiny bit. What was, because you were talking about food right when you got back to the mainland, what was food like in the military?
Well, the first thing we got was K ration. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not, but it's in a package about that big and about that thick. And it's covered with wax paper and the wax on the outside. So, okay, you break it open. There's 4 cigarettes in there, and they're moldy. You can taste it when you smoke it. Okay, the little can about that big around, you open it up, it's cheese with little flecks of bacon in it, maybe something like that. There was some forest green toilet paper, because you didn't want 1,000 guys dropping white paper and have an airplane go over and say, oh, there's where they are, you know. So there was a piece of candy, and there was a little glassine thing in there that was supposed to be coffee. You open it up, put it in some water and stir it up, and that's your coffee. But I think it was chicory rather than coffee. It wasn't very good. Now, to show you how old those rations were, you take there was a stick of Wrigley gum. You pull that gum out, unwrap it, and bite it, and it breaks like glass. You know that ration has been around for a while. Things got a little better later when we got some C rations. But we never did get the rations that they had in World War II, the MREs and stuff like that, or in Vietnam. So, chow was a thing. Now, I'd like to tell you something about that island. There were 13,000 dead Japanese there on an island 6 miles long, 2 miles wide, widest and longest point. There's 4,000 dead Marines. Now, the temp there is about 115, okay? A body lays out in the sun. We were 7 degrees, 70 miles off the equator. And bodies blowed up, you know. You think a battlefield after the battle would be kind of silent, but these guys are laying out there and they're groaning, turning over, farting, belching. Gases building up inside of them, and they build up and roll over. Not good. Now, had guys bringing supplies in, flying it in because the wonderful Seabees. Oh my God, those guys. They straightened out the airstrip, you know, and had holes in it and so on. Now we could get supplies in. And they started flying them in on DC-3 Dakotas. And they told us, they said, we're out over the ocean, the air is clear, everything, and they're just great. They said, we get down to 5,000 miles over that island and start retching from the smell of the dead bodies. Now, here's the thing. They're all laying out there, and they got maggots on them. The maggots turn to flies, big blue-bellied son of a bitches, that big. And you open a can of sea ration, say 1, 2, 3, and the top of it is covered with flies. So the best thing you can do is pick up your spoon, go like this, and try to get one without getting a fly. We had amoebic dysentery that was 10% fatal. Amoebic dysentery, you crap yourself to death. And if you're standing from here to the TV set and the cramps hit you and you say, I'm going over to that shallow hole, you ain't gonna make it. You know, you better drop your drawers now. And everybody had dysentery. That's part of the smell, and the dead bodies rotting out there, and then the flies coming off of those dead bodies and landing on your food, so on. It was not a pleasant place to be. So.
Do you ever keep a personal diary?
No.
And what do you think of your fellow officers and fellow soldiers?
The Marine Corps never left anybody behind, wounded or dead. And you can depend on the men around you to see to that exactly. Let me give you an example. Here's Korea. Marines fought their way up past Changjiang Reservoir, Chosin to the Yalu River. They sent me to Russian language school. They figured we'd have trouble with Russians. Didn't. It was Chinese. They came down across the Yalu River. It was at Christmas time. And it looked like 1 million ants out there on the snow coming across. The Chinese. Okay, they were trading bodies for bullets. A machine gun would stack up enough people in front of it, they'd lose their field of fire, and they had to move it. They'd run you out of ammunition and run over you. I can't think of the general's name back in Seoul, who said you may retreat as far as the back edge of your foxhole, hold or die. On the left of the Marine Corps was ROK, Republic of Korea. On the right-hand side was the 2nd Army Division. Second to none, they said. When the Chinese come down, they folded and ran. The only outfit that held was the 1st Marine Division, one more time, 1st, 5th, 2nd Regiments. When they held, the Chinese poured down on both sides of them and in behind them. They still had the commandant of the 1st Regiment, who is now the commandant of the 1st Marines. His name was Chesty Fuller. He said, those poor sons of bitches, we have them right where we want them. We can shoot in any direction and kill the enemy. And he said, come on, as men are not at all. We will not retreat out. We'll charge out. And he says, if we run out of ammo, I have the greatest of faith in the bayonet as a basic infantry weapon. They fought 69 miles back to Hamhung. Chinese on both sides of them all the way. In the dead of winter. And they brought their dead and wounded out. They had the dead in the trucks and tied to the bumpers, frozen. And when they got back to Hamhung, the army was there, who had bugged out, and they said, those are our trucks. And Chesty said, you can have them back when you explain to your commanding officer how we got them. So, yeah, Marine Corps is a different breed of cat, entirely. We have a motto, it's Semper Fidelis. Semper Fidelis means always faithful. Now, does that mean just during combat? I don't think so. I was going to reunions up until 5 years ago, and 7 of us showed up to that reunion out of 3 of them, so we decided not to have any more. But, okay, there is a niece to Truman Mallicoat. Truman Mallicoat was an Indian. He got killed on the 21st day that we were on the island. That was about the 6th of October. His niece got in touch with the Marine Corps and said, is that outfit still getting together for reunions? And they referred her to a guy by the name of Vinci that was bringing our reunions together. He in turn told her Nichols would know. And she got in touch with me. Said our family never got closure. All we got was KIA in the Marine Corps. That's it. So anyhow, I said, well, I wasn't with Truman Mallicoat today. He got killed. I was a couple hundred yards from their troubles of my own, but I know who was with him. He lives down here in Visalia. His name is Bobby Jones Jr. And so I referred her to him. He was with Mallicoat today. He got killed. So I get a phone call back from Bob Jones Jr. He says, Nick, we got to go to Oklahoma. That's where the niece was. And I said, you got a frog in your pocket? What? You know? He said, well, Nick, we have to give that family closure. I said, Bob, it isn't a we. I wasn't with you that day. I can't do anything for you. He said, Nick, I don't want to be in front of those people and break down, trying to give them closure. He said, I got to tell them about his last day, and I need you there. I said, Bob, he says, gung-ho. You say gung-ho to a Marine, any Marine, that means fall in beside me. I have something that I can't handle alone. I need you by my side. When a Marine says gung-ho, you don't ask what it's about, who you got to confront, why, or anything else. He says gung-ho, you fall in beside him. That's it. And he said gung-ho. I said, when do we leave? Went back to Oklahoma and saw Mallicoat's family.
Alright then, so, what commendations and medals did you receive in this war?
I don't even know where they are. They're all over the place. American Service Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Medal, and so on and so on. Just the regular stuff. And then of course I had the battle bars, and on the battle bars you get a little bronze star for every battle and so on and so on. So I didn't get the Congressional Medal of Honor, although I earned it many times. No, I didn't collect anything like that. The only medal I collected was a little bit of a metal in my leg.
And was your experience in this war what you expected it to be, or if not, how was it different?
I don't think anybody could have imagined what it would be like before they actually saw it. In fact, what I did, I went to a few war movies because I wanted to, see a little bit about what it was like. It wasn't like the movies at all, not at all. The whole thing is that I thought, having looked at that, I knew what battle was like, but no matter what you come up with in your imagination, there's no damn way you're gonna know what combat is like until you've been there.
And after this war, how did your view on America and the world change?
Oh boy. Well, when I got home, there were a lot of jobs. You get a job very easily. But there were things they were trying to do to help the veterans that weren't helping. One, they'd say, okay, somebody wants to hire you, and you haven't got the experience as a mechanic, but they want to hire you as a mechanic. Well, you're going to be on lower wages, so the government is going to supplement what they pay you. They're going to pay half of it. So all of a sudden you can get hired real easy, and here's this guy that's only paying you half of what he'd have to pay for a mechanic. And that was good for 6 months. So guys would hire you for 6 months and fire you and get somebody else because it was cheap labor and they weren't interested in the veteran law. My brother-in-law, Richard Honest, had both legs blown off above the knee over in Austria. And he came home, and I contacted him. I said, "Hey, Rich, let's go someplace and have a drink." It wasn't the VFW. It was for wounded veterans, is what it was for. I wish I could think of the name of it. It's a rather prominent outfit for veterans. And I told Rich, I said, let's go have a drink. So he said, okay. Now in Iowa, you could not buy a drink over the bar, period. You could go to the state liquor store and buy a bottle. Then you could go out, you could buy 7-Ups and make them yourself. But if it was a private club, which this veterans organization was, DAV, Disabled Veterans of America, okay, then they could sell booze over the bar like that, a mixed drink. So, God, that was kind of nice, you know, if you go in and order one. So, Rich and I went to the DAV. We got downtown, and it was up a flight of stairs, and Rich has got both legs off. And I thought, this is for wounded veterans, you know. I never joined the vets organization. I never went to the VFW. I never went back to the Marine Corps and said anything to the veterans organizations or anything else about the fact that I was around a hell of a bunch of noise for an extended period of time, lots of decibels, and it affected my hearing. I never went back for hearing aids. I never went back for anything. They told me when I got out of the service, they gave me an exam before they sent me home. They said, why don't you put in for a pension on account of your ears? I said, I don't want a pension. They said, well, just make it $1, and then you can expand it later, but you want to get it on the books, you know? I said, no, I don't. I want to go home. I want to get a job. That's all I want. I don't want anything from a vets organization. A lot of guys paid a hell of a price in this war. I paid nothing. And I don't want anything. All I want is right to go to work and earn a living. And I did exactly that.
And what is your most memorable experience as a Marine?
Wow, that's hard to sort out. God, I don't know. We had mortar barrages. They were damn scary. Guys around us get wounded and killed. Gentleman by the name of Millage got a little fleck of metal at the back of the head. He didn't even know he got killed. All of a sudden he's gone. That mortar barrage was kind of a tough one. I don't know. We're standing in chow line below, just across Sniper Road from Bloody Nose Ridge. And all of a sudden, whack, I hear a bang, and it's a high flat snap. That's a sniper rifle at 25. And I turned around, and 3 guys, third guy behind me, I looked, he wasn't wearing a jacket, and he had a hole right there. And I thought, God, he got punched right in the heart. But the bullet came from over there, went through his breast, come out under here, and hit this bone and shattered the ball there. So he had a crippled arm. And things happen like that close to you, and of course, they impress you, you know, but I don't know. I think the thing that stuck with me down through the years, more than anything else, was a speech that I got on religion on Peleliu. I had no religion. And Ignatius Loria was an Italian kid, and he was Catholic, and on board ship before we went in, we went up to receive communion and participate in the Mass. He came back, he had a little blue plastic thing about as big as my thumbnail, and it was on a white string, it was around his neck. I said, "What's he got there?" He says, "That's my shield, Nick." I said, "Shield?" He said, "Yeah, read. It says right on here, whosoever shall wear this in faith, no harm will come to them." I thought, "Oh, really?" So we went in on the island and went across Orange Beach and across the airstrip and up the other side to the China Wall. And I wound up in the same hole with Iggy Loria. And I said, "Hey, Iggy, don't put too much faith in that shield that you got." All the way back across the airfield, there's guys laying there that are wearing those that have holes in them. You talk to them, they don't talk back. You know, not that I would denigrate what your religion or anything, but whatever. He looked at me and he said, "Nick, you dumb son of a bitch." He says, "You don't even get it at all." He said, "I suppose I have to explain it to you like a 3-year-old kid." He said, "Let's take you out of this hellhole. You don't have to be in the stench anymore, the dead bodies and the terrific heat, the whole thing. Let's say somebody would take you out of this hellhole. They take you back to San Francisco. Now they give you a clean towel and a washcloth and warm water and soap. And you get your body clean. You know, you wear the same clothes for 2 weeks, you get pretty ripe, smell good." So anyhow, he says, then after that, after you get clean, what do? They give you the biggest damn steak you can find, or chicken, or whatever you want to order. You get to order anything you want. And he said, "I know how you think, Nick. You'd want about 3 or 4 bottles of Seagrams, and so on. You want about a half a dozen naked blondes running around the room." I said, "Well, 5 would do." You know? So it wound up, he said, "Okay, if somebody pulled you out of here and got you clean like that, and got you the food, and got you the booze, and so on, would you figure you'd been harmed terribly?" I said, "Well, I'd be deprived of the wonderful companionship I have here. Yet at the same time, I'd go for it." He said, "Okay, Nick, did any harm come to the guy that was taken back there?" He said, "Okay, let me explain to you how far off base you are. Number one, you can imagine something that you think is good, like San Francisco and a clean body and the whole thing. But," he said, "can a chicken understand algebra?" I said, "Well, it hasn't got the mental scope, has it?" He said, "No, it hasn't. And you haven't got the mental scope to understand the mind of God. And when he comes up with something that's much better than San Francisco," he said, "you can't even imagine. You have a brain that can't get into that kind of calculus." So actually no harm came to them. They were taken out of here and taken to a place of peace and contentment and so on, and given big rewards. So he made sense, you know. And as a consequence, when I come home, I joined the Catholic Church. But there are a lot of things that happen to you on the battlefield. Somebody explaining his faith to you, or somebody with a bad premonition, somebody, you know, that puffs it off all of the war. "Oh, this don't bother me, you know." You know, down deep inside, by God, it does. I can bet you. So, yeah, no.
And in what ways do you view your experience in a positive light?
In what ways, what?
In what ways do you view your experience in this war in a positive light?
Oh boy. Well, had never been tested. I didn't know whether when I heard that first shot I was going to turn and run in fear, you know. I had no idea how strong I was, because without being tested, you never know. But I got tested over there, and I found out who I am. I found out that I can do whatever I'm ordered to do. I really believe that a lot of people grow up never running into a test, consequently never knowing how strong they really are. So it's as I told my dad. My dad was the kind of guy that gave me troubles, lots of troubles. And it seemed all I had to do was spill a glass of milk and I'd get one across the head. So ultimately when I got home, Dad asked me what I learned in the Marine Corps. And I said, well, I learned never to fear any man that walks the face of the earth. And Dad, that includes you. So don't push it. So, yeah, I think that you learn a lot about yourself in a case like that. Things that you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't been put to the test.
And who did you admire the most out of the men that you fought with? And do you remember their names?
Oh, God, lots of them. Bobby Jones Jr., Dale Troxel, Major Meyer, who was our commanding officer. I don't know, there were so many of them. An Indian that we had with us by the name of Truman Malakote, who got killed 21 days in. There were so many of them that I can hardly, each one was an individual, and I can depend on each and every damn one of them. If I got in a bad situation, they'd all put their ass on the line to pull me out, if it cost theirs. Okay, let me tell you about the horrific part of that battle. Let me pick a unit. L Company, 7th Regiment. We went in on Orange Beach. 5th Regiment. 7th was to our right. The 1st was to our left. Okay, the 7th Regiment, we went across the island, across the airfield, everything was flat. We got across very nicely. The guys at the 7th turned south, and then come up on our right flank against the ridges there. So L Company said, but the reason I happen to know about this, the man who lived through this was named Norman Eel. I have in my notebook his death certificate, the whole thing. Norman Eel was with the 7th Regiment. They went in with 300 men the 15th of September. The 6th of October, 21 days later, there were 45 men left out of the 300. They went up a hill and they got caught in a crossfire up there. Out of the 45 that were left, 8 of them came back down. Norman Eel was one of them. He got shot in the leg and it broke his femur. He rolled down the hill to get out of the fire to try to get away. And he pushed himself over a rock and collected one through the middle. He got down to a cliff and 7 men came down there. One of them was a corpsman. And he said to Bud, I'll try to kill your pain. So he gave him a shot, and just as he pulled the needle out, the corpsman got it through the head. The other guys said, Bud, we got wounded here, we're helping down, we'll come back up after you. He said, don't. Anybody that's up here isn't going to live. They threw him off that cliff with that shattered leg, the whole thing, into the coral below, and he lived. That was 6 men that survived out of 321 days on Peleliu. L Company 7th, check it out.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Do you have any...
Yes, I have. Oh, go ahead.
Do you have any photographs of things or sorts that you would be willing to show
Do I?
us? Would you love to choose a few that you would love to describe and show it off to the camera?
I don't know if you'll be able to pick this stuff up. There's Truman Malachos, that son of a gun. Okay, there's a picture of Peleliu before we hit there.
Just a minute. Alright. Yep. Go ahead.
Got it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, you see here is the little hut. There's one the Japanese built a catwalk out and built their outhouse out over the ocean to make their droppings go in the ocean to try to cut down on disease. But you can see the foliage there. That is one of the 5 sisters. There were 5 hills like that, honeycombed with caves, hundreds of feet high, and there were a million places to hide. And every time you attacked one of the 5 sisters, you caught fire from the other 4. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. There's the cost. There's Nick.
Oh, let's get that.
Yeah.
Let's get that.
Can we?
Mr. Nichols, can we get that picture on the camera as well?
Oh, that's okay. Now that picture, just a moment. There has to be a better one. Now see, this is before I went overseas. A little better picture of me maybe than this, but there I have the combat ribbons and so on.
Okay.
Okay?
Haven't changed a bit.
A lot of these pictures are official. Okay, I told you about Norman Eel, the guy that, one of 6 survivors out of L Company 7th. That's his, he lived in Eagle Grove, Iowa, and that's his funeral notice. He died about a half a dozen years ago or more. These are worth looking at. Others are not. Dead bodies. Dead bodies. Okay. There's the top of one of the ridges there after we had pretty well cleaned the foliage off from it. Burial at sea, Japanese who had decided that they didn't want to give up and they stuck their toe in the trigger and blew their heads off. I'm not sure you're too interested in a lot of dead bodies. There seem to be a few of them around. Tom Rhea painted that. It's called Last Step. Dead guys along the beach. Here's a whole slew of dead guys and more dead guys. And right there was the far edge of the airstrip, And you'll notice in that picture, you'll see leggings wrap around. You'll see the curve of an American helmet right there and so on. This is where guys ran into hand-to-hand at the far edge of the airstrip. And they stacked up bodies there that you could walk on bodies for about a half mile and never touch the ground. So there were lots of casualties. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for a special picture here. If I can find it. If I can't, that's... Okay. We had guys on stretchers all the way along Sniper Road there. These are guys from the 1st Regiment that are being relieved and sent out. And there's about a mile there that one stretcher was laid out next to the next one that dead Marines on. Hey, there's a good one. Worst enemy you'll ever have is self-doubt. Because if you doubt that you can do it, you can't. You sit there. That's a picture of me, but you'd never recognize it. We're on our way in. And what happens is you get off of the ship and onto your Higgins boat. Okay, they're in a circle. And there's several circles. And ultimately they shoot a flare. That means this circle straightens out into a line and then it heads into the beach. And so does the other circles. And it was 115, 18 degrees. And that is Nick right there. And we pulled our camos off because we knew we'd have 5 minutes to get them back on before we hit the beach. Lots of carnage. Of course, that's on the beach, gone in, and you can see the Amtraks and so on burning up out there in the water. And there's where they dropped one on us. Now there's, you saw that first picture with all of the foliage? Mm-hmm. The trees down on the beach, there were very few standing. You run your hand up against one and run it up and down, there's enough shrapnel buried in it to just shred your hand. There was just no place that shrapnel did not hit at one time or another. Okay, that'll give you an idea of what it was like. You can see a trailer down there. That gives you an idea of the size of the ridge. And that was a mile long and 500 feet high, and there were caves in there 9 stories deep that they had excavated in the 30 years that they were on that island. Dead bodies, dead bodies. I took that out of the breast pocket. It wasn't a picture of the Jap that died there. This must have been his brother or something. It didn't look like him. But I took that picture out of his pocket. And
off of a Japanese soldier who had died?
Yeah. Pillboxes, blockhouses, bunkers, they had steel doors, and they had cement 4, 5, 6 feet thick reinforced with iron bars. When we come to the first ones, some guy went up there and put fire on the door to keep it was under air. So what happened is the guy got up there and laid under the door with a grenade. They fired to keep the door shut until he got up there. When the door come open, he pulled a pin on the grenade, threw it in. And you go on further up the line, you start getting flak from the same damn pillbox that you've taken out. The thing is, they had a thing like a funnel, that big around at the top, then it went down like this and straight down for feet. And a grenade would come in, they'd kick it into there, and it'd explode and all the shrapnel would go up to the ceiling. You figure you had it deloused, and you did not. At the end of the handle, feel that thing?
Yes.
That's called the skull buster.
Oh, yes.
Hold it in your hand this way, so hold it this way. And lay it out like that.
Now, incidentally, that is not history of World War II. That knife came out of World War I, trench knife. I have in the other room a K-bar, which was the knife that we used. And it's much better. It hasn't got brass knuckles or a skull buster on it, but it does have a blade that's sharp and made for slashing. That's made for stabbing. That's a stiletto. So there is a difference. There's a picture of what it looked like up on Bloody Nose Ridge. That's how much of the foliage was left. Now, of course, I need to say there is such a thing as WP, Willie Peter, they called it. It's white phosphorus. And you throw a shell and it explodes. And white phosphorus goes up in the air and it winnows down. If it lands on you someplace, it'll burn. Bloody Nose Ridge that had all the foliage on it that it hasn't got anymore. So a lot of things happened there that kind of tore up the vegetation and so on. I didn't find one picture I was looking for. That's okay. It isn't that important anyway. It's just a picture from the top of okay, there's a picture for you.
Are you in the picture?
Most of those gentlemen are gone now. I should have taken the time to straighten this out and get it all. Yeah, doesn't matter. Oh, I got a picture that would interest you. That is a picture of Joe Foss. Joe Foss was a commandant of VMF 121 on Guadalcanal. The man that's standing along beside him is Lindbergh, who went down. He wasn't in the Marine Corps, but he went down and climbed into an aircraft and went up on a couple or three missions to get some shooting in. So that was two very, very good men that came together. I think that's more or less most of what's interesting there. Seems to me that's not really put together right. I should have taken the time to do that, but I haven't.
Thank you so much for showing us that. I have two last questions before our interview is
Okay,
over. So,
if you do, I'll kill you. How's that for the answer for the first? But go ahead.
all right. So, what would you say to people, young people considering the military today? What would you tell them?
Now that is a loaded question. I would say go and die. Yeah, have fun. Not really. If there's any way that you can stay out of a war, might be a hell of a good idea. It is not what I would call a pleasant experience. There were lots of guys that were farmers, and they said, hey, we have to feed the troops, therefore I can't be drafted, I gotta run the farm here. There are guys in manufacturing the same way that didn't have to go to service. And maybe if a guy were a real thinker, you know, what he might do is say, I gotta get me a job that is essential to the war effort. And that way I don't have to go out there and get shot at. Which makes sense, you know, if you don't want to get shot at. But a lot of times your spirit of adventure and challenge says, go get shot at, damn it, find out what it's like. Most of my buddies felt that way. We had two brothers in our outfit, Joe and Phil Padula, and their dad died. And Major Meyer called him into his tent and he said, I can send one of you guys home, only one. Make up your mind who it's going to be. They went back to see the Major and they said, neither one of us is going back. There isn't anything we can do for our dad, he's dead. We don't want to split up, and we want to stay with our unit. So, that was the way it was. Everybody, if they had taken my uniform away from me and sent me home, that would have broken my heart. I'd have rather died, because I couldn't leave the men that I had served with. I couldn't have left them there, and not been with them. So, that was a place I had to be. That was one place on earth that I would have chosen over all others. It was just to be there with my guys. And I can only say they become brothers. When you live in somebody's shirt pocket for a couple of years and depend on them, somehow or another, you come together and you're like brothers. You can't deny any one of them anything. Joe Smackendorf hasn't got any socks and you got 2 pairs. Here, Joe, you know, anything for each other. Guys have run low on ammo. And I would like to keep the 10 rounds I've got. But somebody else is down to 0, I'm going to give them 5 rounds. If my water's running out, I'm going to share what I got with somebody that hasn't got it, and so on. And with that, Butterfield was a friend of mine. They sent us out on a sneak and peek, and I came back, and while I was gone, we hadn't eaten in about 9 years, you know, we were very hungry. And while I was out on patrol on that sneak and peek, Lieutenant come by and he passed out K ration. I wasn't there to get mine. I got back to our unit. Butterfield come up to me and he said, hey Nick, I saved my K ration.